and don't come back again. Well, a couple of months after I got back to America, and by the way, my wife had no idea where I was for over 36 hours, and she was very concerned because in the Islam where I was happens to be predominantly Muslim, and it would have been pretty easy for them to get rid of me, I guess. But when I got back, they contacted me, and I have a nice letter of apology that they were sorry that they didn't get the correct information. They found out that Oberg was the one that was spreading all the rumors and the lies, and that I was so good, and invited me back with my wife. And my wife said, no, I don't think we need to go back there yet. We'll consider it in the future. Anyway, that brought me down to the point where the information was getting out, and then I was asked to come forward and start speaking at some of these UFO and contact convention deals. And after a couple of years of going out and presenting that and being sure that my archive was secure, we went to Roswell, to the Roswell UFO Museum and Research Center, and presented them with a digital copy of all the videos, the slides, the 8x10 prints and pictures. So they're secure, and people from around the world have been able to get access now to all of the material that I saved of the parts that I didn't throw away. After all, I did what I was told. I don't care what you do, just get rid of all but one set. And I did that, and they left the set there. So since then, well, I spent my whole time with Boeing as a 737 flight instructor. After we left there, as I said, we moved to Seattle and then down to Berlin, and where we discovered little miniature. We had big horses up in Seattle, a couple of them. And my wife has always loved horses, and it's her thing, and I love her, and so we've got horses. When we found the miniature horses, it was love at first sight. She loves those little things and takes good care of them. So here we are now, waiting 50 years since we landed on the moon to find out why the things that I was a party of knowing about hasn't been made worldwide public, and what we're calling full disclosure. And I finally, as I said, I got set up and made the information available, and now I've been going around and giving talks and showing pictures that people are just shocked at and being able to see. And now, thanks to T.J. Morris, I'm having the opportunity to ask the people out there who've had experiences, direct contacts, or what have you, come and join what we're doing. We are finding that people want to enjoy what we're talking about, the secret space program, and we've got an organization where we are taking on positions, and people can say that we're having fun and coming out and telling stories, and as whether it's real or not. But you know what? When we come out and tell the whole truth, even in a story form, it allows us to be able to get the information out, and the rest of the people that have maybe been involved, what we've been involved with, are willing to come forward now because they'll know they're not alone. And here we are, finally, in the point of what I'm calling full disclosure. So if you're out there listening to this, I'm the one you want to contact. So let's get the information out there. That's what I'm doing. That's what I'm about.
I think that's wonderful, Ken. And you and I both knew Alan Bean, the first artist of Another World. He was the fourth astronaut to walk on the moon. And I'd like to dedicate this show to him, if you don't mind, because we both met Alan Bean. And I'd like you to, anything you remember about him. Folks, he lived March 15th, 1932, the same year my mother was born, and he died May 26th, 2018, okay? So what do you think? Can I talk about that for a minute? Or you want to just go ahead and...
No. I agree with you completely, but I do want to add one to that, because now Alan Bean was one of the first seven. And most of them had already retired when I got down to Houston in 1996. And so Alan Bean wasn't there, but occasionally, and I got to meet all of the original ones. But the gentleman I would like to add in that also perished in there, that was Yom Irwin. He and I, he was Apollo 14, and he and I spent more than 1,000 hours working together inside the lunar module, LTA-8, in the vacuum chambers. May I add one on to that? There's actually all of them belong, but I certainly think that Alan Bean deserves recognition. I appreciate that.
All right. Well, we'll do several, I guess, that we know. Apollo 14 is very important, but Alan Bean I met in his gold Corvette with, I called him Black Batwings, but he was the lunar module pilot of Apollo 12 and the fourth man to set foot on the moon. Now, he has, somebody is paying for an Alan Bean website, so thank you. I haven't vetted it yet, folks. I didn't know I was going to do this. Mostly what I do is impromptu a lot of times, and you may know that. But apparently he said first artist on another world, Alan Bean, and he wrote this, and he said it's very short, but let me read it to you. I think that's great. The first paintings of another world by an artist who was actually there. I was the lunar module pilot of Apollo 12 and the fourth man to set foot on the moon. I explored the beautifully desolate landscape of the ocean of storms, and later as commander of Skylab 3, Skylab Mission 2. I spent 59 days in orbit around our fragile blue and white Earth. I had been painting earthbound subjects for many years. By the time I returned from Apollo 12 and Skylab 3 mission, but my fellow astronauts convinced me to paint my experiences on the moon. You can create the very first paintings in all of history of a place other than our own planet, they said. Your paintings will forever be the first paintings of the many other world humans. Oh, there's something on your making sound.
Just a minute.
Yeah. Okay, just a minute.
I apologize. It's not a spacecraft, and I don't know how to fly a cell phone.
Okay, yeah. For some reason, even cell phones, every time you touch them, they make a mistake and put it on the air. But let me go back. Okay, I'm going to start it. You can create the first paintings in all of history of a place other than our own planet, they said. Your paintings will forever be the first paintings of the many other worlds, plural, worlds humans will visit as the centuries unfold. Because of this unprecedented opportunity and challenge, I resigned from NASA in 1981 to devote all of my time and energy to painting, celebrating the great exploration that was Apollo. Over the years, my art evolved into a mixture of paintings and sculpture, textured with my lunar tools, sprinkled with bits of our Apollo 12 spacecraft, and a touch of moon dust from the ocean of storms. You can see many of my paintings on this site and read more about the space age techniques and material I used to use in my work. Now, he has gallery 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And I just wanted to say that, and we'll talk more about him. I met him. He was a very, very nice person. And we can talk about several people, but I want you folks to understand, he didn't lie about being in space, okay? So, and Ken can talk about some things that we've gone through about people thinking that's not real. But Ken and I worked with a lot of very brilliant people, and my husband worked at NASA, Steve Parrish, and he worked for Chris Kraft hired him. Stephen Lee Parrish, he was born June 21st, 1949, in Knoxville, Tennessee. Now, he was not an astronaut, but he worked there, and his father worked for Grumman, and so did Ken. So everybody, not just the men that walked on the moon, but everybody that was a part of NASA deserves to be heard and that lived through that time of all the Apollo missions and everything, but especially from the time my mother was born and Alan Bean was born in 1932. And Don Garrett came on here last week with Ken, and Ken just talked for a moment about Don Garrett last week, and we'll try to get him back on because he's one of those NASA people. Now, he mentioned he was Air Force. Why don't you give them just a little bit about Don, and he can come back and listen to it with you knowing a little bit about him, and then we'll go into that the other astronauts. Go ahead.
Don Garrett was actually kind of like my first brother, my brother A.R. Johnston. Anyway, Don Garrett was the son of my mother's sister. Anyway, Don Garrett was went to the West Point and was graduating from West Point, and at the time when the Air Force Academy was building up, and they were given the opportunity. Actually, when he graduated, did he want to go into the Air Force or stay in the Army? Well, he always wanted to fly, so Don chose to become an Air Force officer. He became all the way up to Air Force captain, but he was a fighter pilot, jet pilot. One of the funniest things about it, though, is 6'2", and when he gets inside of one of these small fighters, and there'd been a little short guy like me, about 5'8", and he would taxi out and get ready to take off, and he'd hit the switch to have the canopy come down. It had hit him on the top of the head, and he had to crunch down and reach down and pull the lever and make the seat lower down to the bottom of it. But Don was a brilliant person. He was picked by the Air Force to be a part of their mold program, which was like the Skylab, and was sent to Houston to work with the rest of us on testing the lunar modules so that he'd be up to speed to all of that. And I'll say this to add to what TJ just said. Once we had landed on the moon and was going on, and the government canceled some of the other programs, Grumman actually laid off almost 30,000 employees nationwide. So, and that's whenever my job wound up ending, and I went over to the lab to work with the ILC to help train the astronauts how to wear the spacesuits and what to do in that. So now Don Garrett was, and still is, one of the few around that has all the information in his head about things that went on behind the doors and the people we met, even from the old paperclip crews of Wernher von Braun. So he's a very brilliant person. He actually invented how you could create artificial created diamonds with all the carbon stuff and dynamite and a vault type thing to be compressed and with all the heat and fire from dynamite and created diamonds. It's amazing. So we'll try to have Don on the program with us sometime in the future.
Thank you. Now, you mentioned another gentleman. I guess he was an astronaut. Did you mention Jim Irwin? Was that who you mentioned?
Yeah, Jim Irwin. Right. Jim Irwin and I were extremely good friends. And as I say, we spent nearly 1,000 hours of my 3,000 hours inside the lunar module spacecraft. And that's why he was picked to take the place of the astronaut Apollo. Gosh, I'm having a problem here. 14, I think. And replace him because they thought he had been exposed to measles, and so Jim Irwin was stepped in because he was so well trained. Of all the rest of the astronauts, he was the most well trained on the lunar module spacecraft. So Jim was he was a test pilot for the Air Force, and he wound up getting injured in a crash of one of the fastest test craft that we had, and they didn't think he'd ever walk again, but he proved them wrong. He came back, and he was able to be selected as one of the regular astronauts of the group they were in and get in all the tests we had, and then wound up going to the moon. So you don't give up on your dreams. You hang in there.
Well, I recognize his face and as an astronaut, so I must have met him down in NASA while my husband was working there over at Nassau Bay National, or just coming and going. But I remember him, and we'd like to let's just talk about him for a moment. He was born March 17th, 1930 in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. He died August 8th, 1991 in Glenwood Springs, Colorado. It says his space mission was Apollo 15, and his education was U.S. Air Force test pilot, United States Naval Academy, and University of Michigan and East High School. His awards were NASA Distinguished Service Medal and Air Force Distinguished Service Medal. So Alan Bean has his alanbean.com. Let's see if Jim Irwin has a website. If not, we need to definitely make him. I mean, it says Jim Irwin Apollo 15 Salute National Air and Space Museum. And then James Irwin, Eighth Men on the Moon, space.com. I see To Rule the Night, To Discover Voyage of Astronaut Jim Irwin on Amazon. Rule Night, Discovery Voyage Astronaut of To Rule the Night, The Discovery Voyage of Astronaut Jim Irwin, William A. Emerson Jr. on Amazon. So don't see a Jim Irwin right now, but that's going to be something that I guess talking about them helps people that know them and remember them. And that's a good thing, folks, because history To me, I like history. We're going to talk